Well, many Montanans woke up to the earth shaking around 12:30 this morning during the biggest earthquake the state has experienced in a dozen years.
The earthquake south of Lincoln shook up Montana and much of the west. The magnitude 5.8 earthquake struck Montana nearly 7 miles southeast of Lincoln. The quake was felt across Montana. It even woke up people in Spokane, and people as far away as Vancouver and Lethbridge in Canada reported feeling the quake. Since the first quake, a total of 14 aftershocks in the Lincoln area have been recorded.
Now, the earthquake's epicenter was just a few miles outside the town of Lincoln, where there were thankfully no injuries and no significant structural damage. But it did create a major mess in at least one Lincoln area business. MTN's Mackenzie Frost traveled to Lincoln right after the quake.
Despite being one of the hardest hit businesses in Lincoln, the D&D Foodtown Market continues to help customers, even as they begin their own cleanup process.
I knew it was going to be bad in the store, but I didn't know it was going to be this bad.
Walk down every aisle, and it's difficult not to step in some sort of mess. Broken jars, hot sauce dried to tile, and food piled in heaps on the floor. The earthquake shook Assistant Manager Ruth Baker.
We woke up to a lot of shaking. My first instinct was, yeah, earthquake.
Baker may have known right away what was causing the trembling, but for Iowa native Dale Bower, an earthquake was the last thing on his mind when his camper began to shake.
The only thing I could possibly imagine is some wild animal must be attacking this trailer.
Then the first aftershock happened.
I'm going, this animal's back. He's here again.
An earthquake didn't seem possible until Bower realized that the cabin his brother was staying in was shaking too.
Enough that there was sheetrock against the wall and it fell down on the floor and just scared the bejeebers out of him.
While Bower doesn't have a store to clean up, he and Baker can't agree on one thing.
Definitely worse than I thought.
It was a terrifying experience for me.
As Baker and her team clean up the mess, customers continue to rely on the D&D, the only grocery store in town, to get what they need. In Lincoln, Mackenzie Frost, MTN News.
The Lewis and Clark County Sheriff's Office, first responders, and county leaders met just after the sun came up to develop a plan for assessing the situation in Lincoln. Over a map at the Lincoln Rural Fire Department, Sheriff Leo Dutton and Fire Chief Zach Muse divided up the area for patrols. They needed to check area bridges, city infrastructure, and rural residents who may need assistance. The primary goal, however, was just to be a visible presence to assure residents that help is there if they need it and to deter anyone who may be considering taking advantage of the situation. Chief Muse says it's also important to check for damaged propane lines, chimneys, and heating vents. If any of those are damaged, it can increase the risk of fire or carbon monoxide poisoning.
Out checking, a little more in depth, seeing if there's any cabins, that aren't occupied that have some issues, propane tanks. Those are the ones we're a little more worried about that no one will notice for a while, don't have neighbors close by.
Now, both Chief Muse and Sheriff Dutton say if you see something you suspect is earthquake damage that may be a hazard, or if you see people who don't look like they belong in the area, don't hesitate to report it to authorities.
Dispatch centers across the state were inundated with calls about the earthquake. Great Falls Cascade County Emergency Communications Center received more than 300 calls from the community members looking for information about the earthquake. 3 dispatchers were on shift last night. A 4th person came in to help. Great Falls Police Department posted on their Facebook page asking people to refrain from calling 911 unless they needed help from law enforcement, fire, or ambulance.
Well, some people called in asking about Holter Dam, others called in asking about Yellowstone, others asked about when the next quake would occur, and we can't give them an answer to that. We don't know when they'll occur.
Dispatchers know they're the first line of defense or first line of help for anybody. So when they're dealing with phone calls like, can you give me a phone number for this, or can you tell me this, and it's not a 911 related call, and they see other 911 calls pop up, they never know when that other 911 call is a heart attack, choking baby, car crash, fire, that they need to get on right away, and seconds count.